Welcome to Trashmagination, a podcast about reimagining trash. I'm Carla Brown. Today we're talking about the creative reuse of stuffed toys. Did you know that May 28th is World Play Day? Well, I thought that would be a great opportunity to talk about toys. Stuffed toys can be difficult to give away. Obviously for sentimental reasons, but also because once a child has played with a stuffed toy for a long time, many charities do not want that. People worry about the cleanliness of these toys, and if the fur is bedraggled, let's get real, that toy will not be wanted by another child. And so we are faced with a difficult situation when we have a big box of used stuffed toys. Now, stuffed toys fall into the recycling category of textiles, and unfortunately, in the United States, only 15% of textiles are currently donated for reuse or recycling, and that's according to an organization called the Secondary Materials and Recycled Textiles Association, or SMART. The average American family throws away 324 pounds of unwanted textiles per year, and that would include stuffed toys. So today, let's talk about how to give a better gift than a conventional stuffed toy. And then the second topic will be, if you're not somebody who likes to make things, where can you get rid of old stuffed toys? And if you maybe want to make something from your old stuffed toys, I'm hoping to inspire you with some really cool stories about artists who have done some amazing things with stuffed toys. And finally, I will talk a little bit about how to take apart your toys and make them into something new. So let's start with how you can avoid gathering up a big collection of stuffed toys that you will have to recycle someday. It is difficult because people love to give stuffed toys as gifts. But the truth is that most of these toys are made in less than ideal working conditions, and their fur, in most cases, is made from petroleum products. So if you think about it, your stuffed toy started out as oil drilled from the ground. That makes them a lot less cute, I think. But if you really want to give somebody a stuffed toy or a lovey, but you don't want to make your own, what I might encourage you to do is to seek out people who make these stuffed toys from recycled materials. For example, you can go onto Etsy, which is an online store where there's a lot of handmade products, and you can search on terms like eco-friendly toys or reclaimed and salvaged fabric toys. And one of my favorite artists who makes toys from recycled fabric is Cotton Monster, who is an artist in Baltimore, Maryland. There is, unfortunately, a disincentive for artists to make toys from recycled materials. In 2008, a law was passed in the United States called the Consumer Product Safety Improvement Act. And while it has a lot of benefits that protect our children, there are some disadvantages for a small maker who wants to make some toys from recycled fabric. And that's because the law requires that all stuffed toys, all plushes, are tested by a qualified lab for chemicals. And while that sounds like a really great idea to protect our children, the problem is that if you make individual items from individual pieces of recycled fabric, it would get very cost prohibitive if you were going to test that fabric each time. I learned all about this from Abby Glassenberg, who has the podcast While She Naps. She's a stuffed toy pattern designer, and I will link to some of her very insightful blogs about this topic. Next, let's talk about places that you could bring a stuffed toy if you don't want to make something out of it. The first step is to think, is this toy new or is it kind of bedraggled and well-loved? If you have a toy that's new, maybe a gift you received that the child didn't play with, for example, there are actually quite a few places you could bring them. A lot of police and fire services accept toy donations of new toys with tags on them, and they bring these in their squad cars or in their fire trucks, and they give them to children when they arrive at a crime scene or at a fire. Some homeless shelters and pet shelters accept new toys as well. And finally, there's this app called Stuffster, Stuffstr. And in this app, you can post all sorts of items that you'd like to get rid of, and you can either put them up for sale or you can see if there's a local organization that would like to accept them. And once you have enough to fill a cardboard box, Stuffster will notify the Postal Service to come pick up the box, and it will provide free shipping. Now, if you don't have that many toys and you'd like to gather enough to make a kind of a big event out of it, and you'd like to engage your community or your school, there's a whole bunch of event ideas that you can do around stuffed toys. For example, you can have a neighborhood toy swap. Or like my neighborhood, every year we have a community yard sale where we centralize our advertising for the sale, and then everybody puts out their stuff on the same day. And something that I've done in the past is I will have a whole section of my sale where everything is free. And that's a great place to put stuffed toys. There's also the free cycle system where you can put up items and people will come to your house and take them as long as they're for free. I found this really cool blog about a neighborhood that held a community charity carnival. They raised money for a charity, and they would have carnival games where people could win stuffed toys. So these would be stuffed toys that people in the neighborhood donated from their own collections. My only concern with this is you may not have less stuffed toys at the end. You just might have different ones. There's an organization called Stuffed Animals for Emergencies. This is an organization that collects mostly new toys, and they give them out to a lot of different emergency situations. There's particularly a cool program where troops deliver toys in the places where they're fighting. They also have materials on their website that teach you how to organize a stuffed animal drive in your community or school. The organization Gleaning for the World collects stuffed toys. They have something called the Teddy Bear Brigade program, and they have a picture on their website of a hockey game where everybody threw new stuffed toys out onto the ice, and then they went around and collected them up. And then finally, you could think about organizing a textile drive. That organization I mentioned at the beginning, called the Secondary Materials and Recycled Textiles Association, they have a list of textile vendors on their website that would help you with doing that textile drive based on where you live in the United States. Now, if your stuffed toys are really not in good shape, but you feel bad about throwing them in the trash, there is an option called the TerraCycle Zero Waste Box. And I'll put a link to where you can order it on the site. It costs money. So you would pay maybe $40 and you get a box, and you can put whatever stuffed toys you want in the box, and then the shipping is included in the fee. They will then ensure that the fibers from the stuffed animals are recycled. And lastly, if it's in really bad shape, you could check and see if your neighborhood has curbside textile recycling programs. There's not very many in the United States, but where they exist, I would make use of them. So those were all the ideas if you just want to get rid of your stuffed toys. But let's have more fun now and talk about the artists who are making awesome things from stuffed toys. In fact, I got the idea to make this podcast because I follow some of these artists on Instagram, and they are truly inspirational. The first one is Chinami Mori, and her Instagram call is 1000 Wave, and she is a weaver. So her account went viral because she likes to take photos of her grandmother wearing her super colorful and groovy weavings. So one day she was weaving with this really fuzzy yarn, which I thought looked beautiful on her account, and I wanted to give that a try because I'm also a weaver. But I didn't want to go out and buy new fuzzy yarn. So I thought about the stuffed toys that my family had in storage. And I took out a toy that I knew my kids did not feel very strongly about, and I took it apart with my seam ripper. And in fact, if you are going to make things from stuffed toys, the seam ripper is your friend. So from that toy, I got a pile of orange fur and a bag full of polyfill stuffing, which is quite a bonanza of materials. The next artist who inspired this podcast is Sherri Lynn Wood. She is a quilter who likes experimenting with reclaimed fabrics. In 2016, she did a 4-month artist residency at Recology, which is a company that manages recycling in the San Francisco area. They've hosted artists for residencies since 1990. Sherri made mostly quilts from the materials that she scavenged during her residency, but she also took 3 large stuffed toys. She took apart their seams and she flattened them and made them into 3 objects that are kind of like rugs. One was a dog, one was an elephant, and one was a bear. The Argentinian artist Agustina Woodgate did something similar to Sherri's project, but she took apart hundreds of toys and she put them together into really big rugs, which she called skin rugs. The design that she would make was often symmetrical, like a mandala. The next artist who made a lot of pieces with stuffed toys was Kelley. He made these giant balls out of toys, which he hung from the ceiling. And one of his pieces, which was made from stuffed toys, sold to the Museum of Modern Art for $4 million. Australian artist Geoffrey Ricardo makes prints from stuffed animals. So what he does, he has these kind of big rollers, and he rolls the stuffed toy through the rollers so they sort of flatten out a little bit. He doesn't take the stuffing out, but he flattens them a bit. And then he paints the stuffed toy with a roller, and he presses them gently down onto paper. Well, maybe not so gently. He really mushes them onto the paper. And in this way, you get a portrait of the stuffed animal. And this is handy if you want to remember that stuffed toy, but you don't want to actually keep the toy. Here's an artistic initiative that is really cool in Japan called Second Life Toys. Its focus is to raise awareness about organ donation for children. So in this initiative, they ask people to donate damaged toys. And they take one toy and they add a piece from another toy to make it whole. So, for example, an elephant with a damaged trunk. Maybe they take the leg from another animal and they put it on the elephant so that the elephant now looks whole. Like a whale might be missing a fin, but they'll take an ear from a deer toy to give it another fin. So people donate their toys to the campaign, and the campaign actually connects the people whose toys get put together. The campaign was hoping that this would take a rather heavy topic, a difficult topic of child organ donation, and give it a way of broaching the conversation. And the toys that result from the initiative are so cute. I really encourage you to check out the video of the toys, which I will link in the show notes. So hopefully hearing about these artists is inspiring you to want to make things from stuffed toys. And so I've put together a whole bunch of project ideas on my Pinterest board, including making a puppet by taking out the stuffing and cutting off the legs of the puppet so that you can put your hand in there and make it move. Making a purse or a backpack, again, taking out the stuffing and adding some cool straps to the stuffy. I saw a project where they made a scarf, kind of more fun. They cut the stuffy in half and put the head on one end and the legs on the other, so it was kind of a fun scarf. I saw a family that made a cool pet bed for their dog out of a very large stuffy. I've seen people make bookends where they take out the regular polyfill from the stuffy and instead kind of put heavy stuff in there like sand. I saw a really cool project by Martha Stewart where they sewed a whole bunch of stuffed animals onto a chair so that it was really kind of mushy and comfy. And then I've seen another project of making a chair where you just take a huge beanbag and stuff it with stuffies. I also saw projects that involved making a hot water bottle out of a stuffy or a cold pack. And then finally, I've seen a lot of cat toys where people take stuffies and then sew them into smaller cat toys. There's a bunch of Halloween costumes or trash fashion ideas on my Pinterest board as well, such as you could have the Halloween costume of raining cats and dogs, where you attach a bunch of stuffed cats and dogs to your umbrella. Or you could be a zookeeper and have a bunch of stuffed animals stuck on you. Or if you are a fan of Curious George, you could dress all in yellow and be the man in the yellow hat. If you have snake stuffed toys, which my son loves, you could be Medusa and make a really cool headpiece out of it. And then I also put some pictures to some really phenomenal dresses and jackets made by sewing stuffed toys together, or a really huge monster costume if you have just an enormous stuffed animal. The last project idea I have here is about a Harry Potter club. My son was in this club and they made a craft related to the Book of Monsters, which is a book in the Harry Potter series. And for that craft, they bought faux fur at a fabric store, but you could easily do this craft again with fur that you get from a recycled stuffed toy. Finally, if you want to make stuffed toys as gifts, but you don't have much sewing experience, I would recommend that you check my Pinterest board about reusing socks because there's a lot of really cute stuffed toy projects that you can make from socks that don't require a lot of sewing. And I did a podcast on the creative reuse of socks, which I will link to in the show notes. So, until next time, may you see your trash as just another source of special moments in your life.